She thought no one would ever find out. It was just one night a mistake she swore she'd bury forever. But secrets like these don't stay hidden, especially when the one person she betrayed is the only one who trusted her the most. What happened next? You won't believe how it all unraveled. The only sounds piercing the heavy silence were the relentless, rhythmic tick-tock of the old grandfather clock in the living room and the furious drumming of rain against the cabin's windows. It sounded like 1,000 tiny fists hammering, demanding entry. Lily stood frozen in the doorway of the small, chilly bathroom, her knuckles white where she gripped the wooden frame. Her eyes wide with a terror that seemed to suck the air from her lungs, were locked onto the small plastic stick, resting on the edge of the chipped porcelain sink. Two stark, undeniable pink lines glowed back at her in the dim, storm-gray light filtering through the small window. Her heart wasn't just racing. It felt like it was trying to batter its way out of her chest. A frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. Her hands trembled violently, making the simple act of standing feel like balancing on a high wire over an abyss. She'd dreamed of this moment since she was a little girl, playing with dolls. The moment she'd discover she was going to be a mother. She'd imagined tears of pure, unadulterated joy, Ryan's arms sweeping her up, laughter echoing in a sun-drenched room. But here, now, in this isolated cabin swallowed by a Vermont storm, surrounded by the ghosts of her husband's family memories, it wasn't joy that flooded her. It was ice. It was dreadful. It felt like the floor had vanished beneath her feet, plunging her into a nightmare she hadn't even known she was living, because the tiny life fluttering into existence inside her, it wasn't Ryan's. How could a moment meant for pure happiness feel like the end of everything? That question echoed in the hollow space. The panic had carved inside her. Tick-tock. The clock counted seconds. She couldn't get back. Drum, drum, drum. The rain mirrored the frantic beat of her terror. To understand the crushing weight of those two pink lines, we need to rewind. Not just weeks, but years. Lily and Ryan, high school sweethearts, the couple everyone envied. Him with his easy charm and steady ambition, her with her vibrant energy and fierce loyalty. They built a life in the city, comfortable, filled with shared dreams and the quiet hum of contentment. Their 5th wedding anniversary was approaching, and Lily, wanting to recreate the magic of their honeymoon, planned a surprise weekend at the one place steeped in Ryan's happiest childhood memories. His grandparents' old log cabin, nestled deep within the whispering pines of the Vermont woods. It wasn't fancy. Faded floral wallpaper peeled at the seams in the tiny bedrooms. The floorboards groaned with every step, each creak telling a story of generations of laughter, board games by the fire, and whispered secrets. The air always smelled faintly of wood smoke, pine resin, and the comforting dust of time. Ryan adored it. Getting it ready required inside knowledge, where the hidden key was buried under the loose porch step, how to coax the ancient furnace to life, where the clean linens were stored in the cedar chest, smelling faintly of mothballs. That's where Jason came in. Jason, Ryan's older brother by 3 years, different as night and day. Where Ryan was sunshine, Jason was often a brooding cloud, quieter, more intense, carrying an air of restless dissatisfaction Lily had never quite understood. He'd always been kind to her, a protective older brother figure. He and his wife Ava had used the cabin for a getaway just the previous fall. He knew its quirks, so Lily enlisted his help. "It's a surprise for Ryan," she'd explained, nerves making her voice a little too bright. "I just need someone to help me air it out, stock the fridge, maybe get a fire going before he arrives. I want it to be perfect." Jason, perhaps intrigued by the secrecy or simply wanting an escape from his own city life, agreed readily. Ava, bubbly and perpetually busy planning her next community fundraiser, waved them off with a cheerful, "Have fun. Bring me back some maple syrup." The plan was simple. Lily and Jason would drive up early Friday. Ryan, returning from a crucial week-long business trip in Denver, would fly into the small regional airport that evening. Lily pictured it perfectly, the cabin warm and welcoming, candles lit, dinner simmering. Ryan walking through the door, stunned and delighted by the surprise anniversary haven she'd created. She packed his favorite sweater, the expensive bottle of bourbon he'd been eyeing, and a new novel by his favorite author. Anticipation fizzed in her veins, but nature had other plans. As Lily and Jason bumped their way down the rutted dirt track towards the cabin late Friday afternoon, the sky, which had been a sullen gray all day, began to unleash its fury. What started as a steady drizzle morphed into a torrential downpour. By the time they'd hauled the groceries inside, wind howled like a banshee through the tall pines, bending them double. Lightning cracked the bruised sky, followed by thunder that shook the very foundations of the old cabin. They barely got the perishables into the chili, fridge and the fire crackling in the stone. Hearth before the lights flickered once, twice, and died with a sigh, plunging them into a gloom only broken by the erratic flashes of lightning and the angry orange glow of the fire. Panic fluttered in Lily's chest.
Ryan's flight!
She fumbled for her phone, its weak signal bar a cruel tease. Finally, a text buzzed through, delayed. Stuck in Chicago. Massive storm system. All flights grounded. Earliest out is tomorrow morning. So sorry, Lilypad. Stay safe. Love you. 6:42 p.m. Disappointment. Sharp and cold washed over her, followed immediately by a claustrophobic sense of isolation. She was stranded in a powerless cabin, in the middle of a terrifying storm, with Jason. She read the text aloud, her voice small against the roar of the wind and rain. Jason, who had been poking the fire, sending sparks dancing up the chimney, looked up. His face was shadowed in the firelight. Wow, that sucks, Lil. He paused, watching her wrap her arms around herself, shivering despite the growing heat from the hearth. Look, he said, his voice calm, practical. This storm isn't letting up. Driving back tonight would be insane, and being alone here without power. He trailed off, letting the unspoken dangers hang in the air. Fallen trees, flooded roads, the sheer, unnerving darkness of the woods at night. I should stay. Sleep on the couch. Make sure you're okay until Ryan can get here tomorrow. Lily hesitated. It felt strange, wrong somehow. But the wind slammed against the side of the cabin with a force that made the windows rattle alarmingly. A branch cracked and thudded onto the roof somewhere above. Fear, cold and primal, overruled her unease. Being alone suddenly seemed far more terrifying. Okay, she whispered, the word almost lost in another booming crack of thunder. Okay, thank you, Jason. What followed was an intimacy forged by circumstance and shared vulnerability. With no power, no TV, no distractions, the world shrank to the circle of firelight and the cocoon of the cabin, holding back the raging night. They rummaged by flashlight and candlelight, finding cans of soup, crusty bread, and the bottle of wine Lily had brought for Ryan. Might as well, Jason had said with a wry smile, holding it up. Celebrate you not getting blown away. They cooked a makeshift meal over the fire in a heavy cast-iron pot, the simple act requiring cooperation, bumping elbows in the cramped kitchen space, laughing nervously when a gust of wind made the candles gutter wildly. They ate cross-legged on the worn rug in front of the fireplace, the flames painting dancing shadows on their faces and the log walls. The wine, initially poured to calm rattled nerves, flowed more freely. One glass, then another. The warmth of the fire seeped into their bones, replacing the chill of the storm outside and the initial awkwardness inside. And they talked. Really talked. Not the usual family gathering small talk about work or Ava's latest project. They talked about things buried deep. Jason spoke with surprising rawness about the constant pressure of being the older brother, the air apparent in their father's eyes, the feeling of never quite measuring up, of his marriage to Ava feeling increasingly like a comfortable, yet distant partnership. Lily, loosened by the wine and the strange, confessional atmosphere, found herself sharing her own hidden anxieties. Her secret fear that she and Ryan were becoming predictable, and that the passionate spark of their early years was dimming into a comfortable routine, her own unspoken longing for something more. They revisited shared history, Jason covering for Ryan's teenage misadventures, Lily's mortifying crush on Jason's college friend, the time Ryan broke his arm trying to imitate Jason on a skateboard. Laughter came easier, deeper, fueled by nostalgia and the potent mix of alcohol and isolation. The fire crackled, consuming logs, filling the room with a drowsy, soporific heat. The air grew thick, heavy. The storm raged on, but inside, it felt like a separate world, suspended in time and warmth. Lily looked at Jason across the flickering light. His eyes, usually guarded, held an unfamiliar intensity. He looked at her not as his brother's wife, but as Lily, just Lily, vulnerable, beautiful in the firelight, and Lily feeling seen in a way she hadn't in years, feeling a deep, aching loneliness and a craving for the kind of fierce connection she'd just been lamenting the loss of with Ryan. Felt an undeniable pull, the familiarity of him, the shared history, the raw honesty of the night, the potent vulnerability. It created a dangerous alchemy. The wine hummed in her veins, lowering inhibitions, amplifying every glance, every shared smile. It started with a touch, his hand brushing hers as he reached for the wine bottle. A jolt went through her, unexpected and electric. Their eyes met and held. The laughter died. The only sounds were the fire's hungry crackle and the relentless drumming of the rain. Time seemed to slow, thicken. He leaned in, hesitantly at first, then with a certainty that stole her breath. His lips met hers. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, a collision fueled by loneliness, wine, and the intoxicating illusion of the moment. It felt like falling and flying all at once. A terrible, beautiful mistake unfolding in slow motion. Logic screamed a warning, but it was drowned out by the roar of blood in her ears and the seductive whisper of the fire. What happens in the isolated cabin when the storm rages and the wine flows? Does comfort become something else entirely? That question would haunt her forever. One kiss blurred into another, the boundary between comfort and betrayal dissolving in the heat and the dark. And then everything unraveled. Lily woke with a jolt, disoriented. Cold morning light, weak and gray, filtered through the rain-streaked window. She was alone in the lumpy double bed in the main bedroom. The fire was dead ash in the hearth. The cabin was silent except for the drip, drip, drip of water from the eaves. Memory crashed over her like a freezing wave. The fire, the wine, the conversation, the kiss. Oh God, oh no. Nausea, sharp and sour, rose in her throat, unrelated to any potential pregnancy. Shame, hot and suffocating, burned her cheeks. She scrambled out of bed, her legs shaky. Jason's sleeping bag on the couch was neatly rolled up. He was gone. No note. Just gone. The silence felt accusatory. Then, her phone, miraculously finding a signal, buzzed violently on the nightstand. A text from Ryan. Landed. Storm cleared. Be there in an hour. Can't wait to see you. Panic, pure and unadulterated, seized her. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. 1 hour. She flew into action. A scalding shower, scrubbing her skin raw as if she could erase the night. The scent of smoke and Jason's cologne. She brushed her teeth frantically, avoiding her own terrified eyes in the steamy mirror. She stripped the bed, airing the room, lighting a scented candle to mask any lingering traces. She forced her trembling hands to make coffee, the mundane task a lifeline to normalcy. When Ryan's car finally crunched on the gravel outside, she met him at the door with a smile plastered on her face, her arms thrown wide. Surprise. He swept her up, laughing, oblivious, planting kisses on her face, commenting on the storm damage, the lack of power, the cozy fire she must have enjoyed alone. Lily hugged him back, burying her face in his neck, inhaling his familiar safe scent. But beneath the relief of seeing him, beneath the desperate performance of normalcy, guilt coiled around her heart, cold and heavy as iron. It clung to her like the pervasive scent of rain-drenched pine that permeated the cabin, a constant suffocating reminder of her betrayal. Could she truly hide a storm that raged inside her? The question echoed with every beat of her guilty heart. Back in the city, life resumed its rhythm, but it felt like moving through thick fog. Lily threw herself into work, into chores, into being the perfect wife. She cooked Ryan's favorite meals, initiated intimacy, and laughed too loudly at his jokes. Every moment felt like a performance, every touch a potential giveaway. She tried desperately to forget the cabin, the storm, Jason's mouth on hers. She told herself it was a terrible, drunken mistake, a moment of weakness magnified by isolation and fear. It meant nothing. Nothing. She repeated it like a mantra. But her body refused to cooperate. Her body refused to let her forget. First it was the missed period. A week late. Lily chalked it up to stress, the upheaval of the trip, the lingering anxiety. She pushed the nagging thought away. Then came the mornings, waking up with a roiling nausea that sent her sprinting to the bathroom, retching over the toilet bowl before Ryan even stirred. She blamed it on a stomach bug, bad sushi, anything but the terrifying possibility taking root in her mind. Her appetite vanished, then returned with bizarre cravings, pickles dipped in peanut butter, ice cream at midnight. She felt constantly exhausted, her breasts tender. The signs were unmistakable, a cruel biological confirmation of her deepest fear. She knew even before she bought the test at a pharmacy across town, hiding it like contraband. She knew as she waited the agonizing 3 minutes alone in her bathroom. The city sounds a distant hum outside, but knowing and seeing were worlds apart. Those 2 pink lines were a verdict, a life sentence. The nightmare was real, growing inside her. How could something so small feel like a ticking time bomb? That question filled her with dread every waking moment. Avoiding Jason became her primary mission. At a family barbecue 2 weeks later, celebrating their father's birthday, the air crackled with her tension. Ryan was relaxed, chatting easily. Ava, vibrant and chatty, flitted around, refilling drinks, oblivious to the earthquake happening beside her. Lily felt like she was made of glass, ready to shatter. Jason arrived late. He barely looked at her. When their eyes did accidentally meet across the picnic table, the look in his eyes was unreadable. Guilt, anger, fear. He quickly looked away, focusing intently on his burger. Lily's stomach churned. She couldn't eat. She could barely breathe. Every laugh from Ava felt like a knife twist. She made excuses, leaving early, claiming a sudden headache. The guilt wasn't just about the baby anymore. It was the monumental weight of the lie, the betrayal of Ava's open, trusting friendship. Shame became her constant companion, a physical ache deep in her gut. She withdrew. She declined invitations to Sunday dinners, skipped book club with Ava, invented work emergencies. She became a ghost in her own life, haunted by the secret blooming within her. The weight of the lie grew unbearable. Lily sat down countless times, a blank sheet of paper before her, a pen trembling in her hand. She needed to tell Ryan. She owed him the truth. She started letters. "My dearest Ryan," she'd write, tears blurring the ink. "There's something I have to tell you, something terrible I've done." She'd pour out her guilt, her shame, her fear, describing the storm, the isolation, the wine, the moment of catastrophic weakness. She'd write pages, raw and honest, her soul bleeding onto the paper. But when she reached the end, the thought of handing him that confession, of seeing the love and trust in his eyes extinguished, it paralyzed her. She'd fold the pages, seal them in an envelope, and hide them deep in her underwear drawer. A growing pile of unsent truths. What words could possibly mend a trust shattered so completely? She couldn't find them. Weeks bled into months. Her waist thickened. The nausea persisted. Denial was no longer an option. She needed to face the reality growing inside her. She scheduled a private ultrasound appointment at a clinic, far from their usual haunts. Lying on the cold table, jelly slick on her belly, the technician moved the wand. The grainy image flickered on the screen. Lily held her breath, a cocktail of terror and a terrifying, unwanted flicker of awe churning within her. The technician, a kind-faced woman with gentle hands, pointed at the screen. "There we go," she said softly, her voice warm. "See that little flutter? That's the heartbeat, strong and steady. And look." She zoomed in slightly. "Congratulations, Mommy. You've got a healthy baby boy in there." Mommy. The word slammed into Lily. A boy. Her breath hitched, caught in her throat. Her eyes welled up instantly, spilling hot tears down her temples and into her hair. On the screen, he looked like a tiny curved bean, a fragile, blurry miracle. But in her heart and the pit of her stomach, he felt like a bomb. A beautiful, innocent bomb whose detonation would obliterate her world, Ryan's world, Jason and Ava's world. The enormity of it crushed her. She clutched the grainy printout like a lifeline. The image of her son seared into her mind. Could love bloom alongside such devastating fear? The seed was planted, fragile and terrifying. That night, her phone lit up with a text from an unknown number, though she knew instantly who it was. "Jason, we need to talk. Somewhere quiet. Tomorrow." The words were simple, but they felt heavy with dread. They met in a nondescript coffee shop on the edge of town, the kind of place where people came to be anonymous. He looked awful, shadows like bruises under his eyes. His usual confident posture slumped. He looked as haunted as she felt. He didn't meet her eyes immediately, stirring his black coffee endlessly. "He knows?" Jason finally asked, his voice low and rough. Lily shook her head, staring at her untouched tea. "No." "Are you going to tell him?" The question hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Lily wrapped her hands around the warm mug, seeking comfort it couldn't give. "I don't know," she whispered, the truth scraping her throat raw. "I don't even know what I want anymore, Jason. Everything is broken." He nodded slowly, finally looking at her. His eyes were full of profound sorrow and guilt. "It was a mistake, Lily. A terrible, drunken mistake we both regret." He took a shaky breath. "But I can't live with this lie. Not with Ava. It's eating me alive. I need to tell her. I have to." Lily's heart plummeted. The fragile illusion of control shattered. If Jason told Ava, the earthquake would begin. Ava would tell Ryan, or Jason would. The truth would erupt. She closed her eyes, seeing the tiny bean-shaped boy on the ultrasound screen. He deserved the truth too, however messy. She swallowed hard, the lump in her throat painful. Then, she forced the words out. Then I have to tell Ryan too. Before he hears it from someone else. Could the truth, however painful, be the only path through the wreckage? It felt like stepping off a cliff. Jason confessed first. Lily learned the details later in fractured pieces. Ava's scream, neighbors reported, had shattered the quiet of their suburban street. Disbelief, then volcanic rage. How could he, with Lily, her sister-in-law? Her friend? The betrayal was a double-edged sword. She threw things, a vase, picture frames, his suitcase. She threw him out. Get out! Get out and never come back. The words echoed in the sudden, terrible silence of their broken home. Lily knew her time had run out. The next day she asked Ryan to come home early, her voice unnaturally calm on the phone. She cleaned the apartment frantically, a pointless attempt to impose order on the chaos about to descend. When he walked in, smiling, asking what was so urgent, her courage almost failed. She sat him down on the couch, her hands ice cold, her voice trembling so violently the words barely formed. Ryan, there's something I have to tell you. Something unforgivable. She couldn't look at him. She stared at her hands, twisting in her lap. She told him about the storm, Ryan's flight being canceled, Jason staying, the wine, the fire, the loneliness, the blurring of lines. She skipped no details, sparing him nothing, hating herself with every wretched word. We kissed, and then she took a shuddering breath. We slept together, Ryan, that night. Jason and I, silence, thick, heavy, suffocating silence. She forced herself to look up. Ryan's face, it was a mask of utter shock, crumbling slowly into a dawning horror, then a pain so deep and raw it made Lily whimper. It was one night, she choked out, desperate to minimize the unminimizable. I didn't mean... He stood up abruptly, the movement violent. Don't. His voice was low, dangerous, trembling with suppressed fury and agony. Don't you dare say it didn't mean anything. He looked at her, really looked at her, and the love that had always been there was gone, replaced by a devastating emptiness. My brother? Lily? My brother? He didn't yell. The quiet devastation was worse. He turned, grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door, and walked out. The click of the door closing behind him echoed like a gunshot in the silent apartment. He didn't come back that night. Can a single night erase years of love? The silence of the empty apartment screamed the answer. The following months were a desolate landscape. Ryan moved out officially, taking only essential things. His absence was a physical ache in the apartment, a constant reminder of the life she'd destroyed. Doctor's appointments were endured alone, the cheerful questions about Daddy feeling like salt in a wound. Her belly swelled, a visible manifestation of her shame. She stopped going out, unable to bear the curious glances, the whispered conversations that seemed to stop when she approached. Her parents, initially supportive, grew distant and confused by Ryan's absence and her evasiveness. Friends drifted away. Sleepless nights were filled with tears, panic attacks in the dark, and the relentless, overwhelming fear of the future. She was utterly alone, adrift on an ocean of regret, with only the relentless kicking of the life inside her for company. When the world turns away, where do you find the strength to go on? She had to find it, for him. When the time came, labor was long and difficult, a physical echo of her emotional turmoil. She faced it alone, surrounded by kind but impersonal medical staff. But when they placed the tiny, squalling, red-faced bundle on her chest, something shifted. Exhaustion warred with a surge of emotion so powerful it stole her breath. He was here, real. I need her. She looked down at his wrinkled face, his tiny, perfect fingers, and whispered the name she'd chosen weeks ago. The name that was her fragile lifeline, Hope. Because despite the wreckage, despite the shame, despite the crushing loneliness, she needed something, someone to believe in. He needed her to hope. She traced the curve of his cheek with a trembling finger. He opened his eyes, blinking in the bright delivery room light. Hazel eyes, not Ryan's warm brown, Jason's unmistakable hazel. In that moment, any lingering shred of denial vanished. The truth, as clear as those two pink lines, stared back at her. Could this tiny, dependent life be her path to redemption? She had to try. Ryan visited once, a week after Hope was born. He stood awkwardly in the doorway of the small apartment, looking older, weary. Lily's heart hammered as she watched him approach the bassinet where Hope slept. He looked down at the tiny baby for a long, silent moment. His jaw worked. Finally, he murmured so softly Lily barely heard it. "He's beautiful." Then he turned, nodded once at Lily, a look of profound sorrow in his eyes, and left. No touch, no questions. Just an acknowledgement of the innocent life caught in their storm. Jason tried. Texts asking how she was, how the baby was, offers of financial help, tentative requests to see Hope. Lily refused. Politely, firmly. "It's not a good idea, Jason." She didn't love him. That night had never been about love. It had been a catastrophic collision of loneliness, circumstance, and poor judgment. Letting him in would confuse things, complicate the fragile bond she was trying to build with Hope. It felt disrespectful to Ava, to Ryan, and to the tiny being who needed her full, undivided focus. Ava filed for divorce shortly after. Lily wrote her a long, raw letter, pouring out her remorse, her shame, her deep sorrow for the pain she'd caused, taking full responsibility for her part in shattering Ava's world. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She knew it wasn't hers to demand. She simply needed Ava to know how truly sorry she was. She never received a reply. The silence was its own answer. Time, as it always does, passed. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. Hope learned to smile, a gummy, heart-melting beam that could momentarily banish the darkest clouds in Lily's soul. He learned to grasp her finger with surprising strength. He learned to roll over, then to crawl, his determined little face focused on a discarded toy just out of reach. Lily watched him, her heart swelling with a love so fierce it sometimes frightened her. It was messy. It was hard. There were still tears, still moments of overwhelming loneliness and regret that crashed over her like waves. But slowly, incrementally, she began to heal. Not by forgetting, she would never forget, but by focusing on the tiny human who depended on her completely. She found a part-time remote job she could do while Hope napped. She took him for walks in the park, breathing in the fresh air, learning to ignore the pitying glances. She joined an online group for single mothers, finding solace in shared struggles and small victories. The jagged edges of her broken heart began, slowly, to knit back together, stronger in the broken places. Hope was her reason, her anchor, her light. 1 year to the day after the cabin, after the storm, after the 2 pink lines that changed everything, Lily felt a strange compulsion. A need for closure, or perhaps just an acknowledgement. She organized a small gathering at a neutral location, a quiet community, room in a local park. She invited everyone, Ryan, Ava, Jason. Only Jason declined, citing prior commitments she suspected were an excuse. She didn't blame him. Ryan showed up late, looking hesitant, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. Ava arrived with a supportive friend, her posture stiff, her eyes wary. The air crackled with unspoken history and palpable tension. Hope, now a sturdy 1-year-old with bright hazel eyes and a mop of dark hair, babbled happily in his stroller, oblivious. Lily took a deep, shaky breath. She unbuckled Hope, lifting him onto her hip, drawing strength from his warm, solid weight. She looked at Ryan, then at Ava, her voice trembling but clear as she spoke. The words that had haunted her for a year, the words she needed them to hear. "I asked you here today because I owe you an apology, a real one." She paused, gathering courage. "Ryan, Ava, I am so deeply, profoundly sorry for the pain I caused you, for the betrayal, for the lies, for shattering your trust in your lives." Her voice hitched. "I made a terrible, selfish mistake, one I will regret for the rest of my life. I don't expect your forgiveness. I know it might never come, and that's something I have to live with." She looked down at Hope, who patted her cheek with a sticky hand. "But I needed you to know. I've changed. This past year, it's been the hardest of my life, but it's forced me to look at myself, to take responsibility. I've had to grow up fast. I'm trying every single day to be better, to be the person Hope deserves." She looked back at them, tears welling but not falling. "And I hope one day, maybe far in the future, you might remember me for more than that one night, for the person I was before and the person I'm trying to be now." Silence, heavy, profound, aching silence hung in the room. Hope babbled again, the innocent sound jarring against the tension. Lily held her breath, her heart pounding against her ribs. She'd laid herself bare. There was nothing left to say. Then Ava moved, slowly, deliberately. She stepped forward, her eyes fixed not on Lily, but on Hope. She stopped a foot away. Her expression was unreadable for a long moment. Then, hesitantly, she reached out and touched Hope's tiny, outstretched hand. He grasped her finger, smiling his gummy smile. Ava looked up at Lily, her own eyes glistening. A sad, weak smile touched her lips. "He's beautiful, Lily," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "He's not to blame for any of this. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a recognition of innocence. A tiny crack in the wall. Ryan stayed the longest after Ava and her friend left. He didn't say much at first. He helped Lily pack up the leftover snacks, fold the stroller. He watched Hope intently as Lily fed him pieces of banana. Finally, as Lily was gathering Hope's toys, Ryan spoke. "How's the new job going?" he asked quietly. It was a mundane question, about the remote data entry job she'd mentioned in an email months ago. But it was a thread, a fragile connection offered across the chasm. Lily answered, keeping her voice steady, telling him about the challenges of working from home with a toddler. He nodded and asked a few more questions. He didn't move back in. He didn't promise anything, but he didn't leave immediately either. He stayed until Hope started fussing, clearly needing his nap. As he walked towards the door, he paused, looked back at Hope, then at Lily. He really is something else, Lil. There was a sadness in his eyes, but also a flicker of something else. Curiosity? A reluctant affection for the child who shared his nephew's eyes? It wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't a neat resolution. It was messy, painful, and uncertain. But it was the beginning of something else. Not a reconciliation, not yet. Perhaps not ever in the way it once was. But maybe, just maybe, the beginning of a second chance. A chance for different relationships to form. For new understandings to grow around the undeniable fact of Hope's existence. A chance for fractured people to find a way to coexist. Perhaps even heal in the harsh. Revealing light of truth. Because sometimes life isn't a fairy tale. Sometimes it's a storm that sweeps you off your feet and leaves you battered in unfamiliar, terrifying territory. Sometimes the stories are messy, tangled with regret and shame, born from moments of weakness that echo for years. But sometimes from the very heart of that wreckage, from the deepest darkness of our mistakes, something unexpected can emerge. Not perfection, but resilience. Not an erasure of the past, but the courage to face it. And sometimes the messiest stories, the ones that break us the most, are the very ones that force us to discover strengths we never knew we possessed. They birth not just new life, like little Hope, but stronger, more compassionate versions of ourselves. Because sometimes, from the darkest shame, if we dare to face it, a new kind of light can be born, a light of honesty, of responsibility, of hard-won growth. And in that fragile, newfound light, even the most broken heart can begin, stitch by painful stitch, to heal. It might never be whole again, not like before, but it can become something different, something stronger, capable of holding both the scars and the love. Found this journey through regret, resilience, and the redemptive power of love compelling. Stories like Lily's remind us that even in our darkest moments, hope can take root. If this narrative touched you, resonated with you, or made you think, please consider sharing it with someone else who might need its message. Like, subscribe for more powerful human stories, and share your own thoughts on second chances in the comments below. Because sharing our stories, however messy, is how we connect, heal, and find the light together.